So welcome those who are joining us. So Alison and I are going to be talking a little bit about how to do sort of creative ideas, particularly going outside a bit. So hopefully that's something that you expected. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plunge straight in. So first question is, what have you already got? So to start with, when we look ahead, the chances of being able to do the big, squeeze 400 people into our carol service and things like this, I think are looking very, very unlikely. So one of the ways to think is to start to rethinking and thinking, how can we use particularly the outside? Because the virus spreads much less outside. So how can we use the church grounds, our village green, or what around us can we make use of that actually could be a great resource to celebrating and telling the Christmas story? In the picture here is from a church in Brighton and Hove, and they had were wondering what to do, and realized that they had lots of beach huts because they're on the beach, obviously. And so they came up with the idea of doing an advent calendar. And every day, a different beach hut was decorated by the owner or a little subgroup to do a different sort of scene from the Christmas story. And then each day there were sort of grand openings and the like. And they ran this for a number of years. And it was a very successful way of bringing Christmas out and connecting with the community, because they looked around and said, what have we got out here that we could make use of? So what have you got that you can use? The second, another example of this is in Helmden, the village of Helmden. They similarly were saying, how can we do something that goes out from the building, and they partnered with people in their community, families, some children, some people who just wanted to be participating, and they used windows in houses in around their village, and they arranged it. Each person had they had a theme. I think one year it was stars, and so you see lots of stars. But again, looking at the Christmas story, or giving each people a little bit of the story to tell, and then they had a trail around their village where people would go and admire the windows. And one of the amazing things about this is actually it wasn't just the church people doing it to everybody. It was it had a lot of enthusiasm, like the previous one, of people who wouldn't normally come to church, but who just liked the idea of creativity and stars and light and participation and families. And it had a huge following, very simple, and actually less work because people from the community joined in. And one of the amazing things was you have these people who wouldn't come to church normally, or maybe might just come to a carol service, who were opening the Bible and looking really hard at the story of Christmas to try and grasp it, and how they could then portray it in their particular window. So there's two starters for you. This year I went up to visit a church that was doing drive-in church. Now, singing is one of the big things that's going to be a real loss, because singing together, it's amazing. Even if you're not a great singer like me, I do like a good sing. And Christmas without singing is going to be a real challenge. But singing in your car is completely legal and acceptable. So this is an example of where a church they just found they've done it in pub car parks. This is in a field in a house nearby, letting them use the field up in Rutland. Just a little bit of PA equipment, and there's John McGarrigle, the vicar, or Don McGarrigle, sorry, and a little bit of PA, and they have just behind there's someone with a keyboard playing, and people loved it because they can sing in the safety of their car, and so there's something to think about. There's some instructions and resources in more detail about if this is something you were thinking about, how you could go about that. I'm half thinking about, in Northampton with the cinema, is the big cinema chain has just announced it's closing. The big car park, could we possibly do something there? Or maybe it's just a small thing in your village, in a little car park or a space or a field, that maybe something could happen. Stations of the Nativity. Father Matthew Robinson, who's part of this team, has talked about, we have Stations of the Cross as a journey that people go through at Easter. What about Stations in the Nativity? A church I was part of a couple of years ago had, and we did it inside, but there's no reason why it can't be outside. Use the church grounds, use the porch, or maybe bits of around the church building itself. And each little area would be a little tableau telling a part of the Christmas story. And again, rather than the 400 people all coming at the same time, which we're not allowed to do, in small groups of maybe 6, it might well be possible for people to walk through, whether it's in the building, if that's feasible, or maybe it's outside using the churchyard and finishing in the porch, or even a trail around the village or the town, with these little stations here. In this case, we had a sort of modern interpretation of the stable, which was a typical garage in Grange Park, with all the stuff hanging up, and then the Mary and Joseph are asleep on the floor in sleeping bags, and the baby's in a Budgeon's shopping trolley, as opposed to a manger. That was their interpretation. But people came round. The schools absolutely loved it. In small groups with their teachers, they came round, and there are instructions where people to laminated, just to telling bits of the story, and for people to think about different things. That's just a couple of very quick ideas to get you started. Alison mentioned this Padlet board, which I'll flag up in a minute or two and show you it, and I'll send you the link. But on that, there are literally dozens and dozens of ideas going into a lot more depth about different things to do. Don't get swamped by it, because the slight danger is there's so many you get slight paralyzed. Like Bishop John and Nolan was saying, are there just 1 or 2 things that you could do and do really well, rather than massively overstretching yourself to do everything? But what could we do, even if we can't use our building for our big carol services? Is there one thing we could do to reach out and tell the story this Christmas?